at the New Jersey Comic Expo with artist extraordinaire Jamal Igle, who is currently working on Black. Please tell us all about Black.
Black is about a young boy named Kareem Jenkins who is gunned down in a case of mistaken identity by the police, wakes up in the back of an ambulance and discovers that he has superpowers. Then he gets drawn into a shadow war led by a man called Juncture, and he discovers that in our world only black people get superpowers and only a certain segment of them get those abilities.
Okay, what was... I see where some of the idea comes from. It's very topical, right, especially over the last couple of years with all of the incidents of black males being shot by police and a lot of the protesting going on.
Right.
So I see that portion of it. Where was the creative side that came into wanting to make this a comic book?
Well, that was all on Kwanzaa Osavejo and Tim Smith, who are the creators of this series. Black was actually something that Kwanzaa came up with about 10 years ago, and he and Tim had been working on it off and on over the years, and they both have experience. Kwanzaa's a former Marvel and DC editor. He was the head editor for the Zuda imprint at DC. He was my editor when I worked at DC, the last year that I worked at DC. And then Tim, who has been a freelance comic book artist for years, works for Marvel, works for everybody. They came up with the basic concept. I came on board actually a little over a year ago. They came and approached me and they said that there was something that they've been wanting to pitch to me for a while now, and they showed me the concept and I said, I'm in.
I have to admit, I'm reading it and I find a lot of it really wild. It's not necessarily the type of book that I would go after, but the art is very, very captivating.
Thank you.
So what's your process for it?
The process is, it's not that dissimilar from the way that I usually work. The only big difference is because it's being shaded instead of full colors in black and white and gray tone. I think that because of that, I have a little bit more freedom to to do more hatching and play with things a little bit. But the overall process is pretty much the same. But I am, for the most part, trying to keep it visually very grounded, which is kind of hard to say when you're dealing with a series with characters with superpowers.
I'm hearing comparisons to Walking Dead. What do you think about that?
In terms of just the overall tone, or
style, context.
I don't know. I don't know if it's necessarily I don't want to say fair comparison, because The Walking Dead is an incredibly well done book. Charlie Adler is a great artist. I think because it's outside of the mainstream, it's not straightforward, like superhero stuff or traditional, Marvel or DC superheroes. Because we're introducing characters of all types, we got a transsexual character that we introduced in the last issue, Swerve. We've got males, females. We're trying to cover the whole gamut. We're trying to show the difference between African Americans to each other, everybody, and as we're going forward, especially with issues 3 and 4, you start to see a much larger scope of what's going on. Issue 1 was more straightforward, it was more of an introductory to the world. Things go very bad very quickly by issue 3.
So, and last question on Black. Let's say that you're in the world of Black, you're Jamal Igle with all of your characteristics. What's the superpower you're going to get, and why?
With all of my... what would I like, or what would I get?
What are you going to get?
What would I get? Probably shape-shifting. Wouldn't make me be anything other than a black person, but yeah.
Different shapes of different black people.
Right.
Okay, so we're here with Jamal Igle. He's kind enough to talk once more about his Supergirl run, which I know he's a very humble person, but this is the premier Supergirl run of all time. There was no better run.
Oh my God! Now you're setting me up for a fall here, man.
No. This was. I'm a very long time follower of Supergirl. She's Silver Age Superman's companion for the most part.
Right.
We get into the Bronze Age. They try to make her an adult, and just as they start making some strides, they decide, oh, we're gonna kill her. they don't bring her back, but they bring her name back. Finally, she comes back, and she's not quite there.
Right.
And then, lo and behold, Sterling Gates, Jamal Igle decide, hey, we can actually do this right, and they do. What was it like? Your run along with Sterling Gates as the writer. Anybody who's read Supergirl, including myself,
right.
This is the premiere, this is the seminal, this is the definitive run. How did you do it?
How did I do it? So it's always a crapshoot when you're working with a new writer, especially somebody that you aren't that familiar with. And I'd met Sterling at New York Comic Con maybe the year before, and he had only done like a backup of an issue of Green Lantern, so I wasn't really that familiar with his work. But when I read the script, I was like, this guy has got something going on, and it was a great 2 years. I for the most part, they left us alone. They let us tell the story that we wanted to tell in the way that we wanted to tell it. And there was a little bit of pushback from certain corners, but I'm exceedingly proud of how it came out.
And rightfully so. This puts Supergirl in, she's finally three-dimensional after this, during this run. Okay, she's three-dimensional. She's not just a Superman in a skirt, as a lot of people wanted to criticize. One thing I will ask now is, at that time, I don't believe there was as much of a push for, a female writer writing a female character,
right.
A black writer writing a black character. Do you think that the freedom that you had there allowed you to help her be a three-dimensional character? That you could just approach her as a human being as opposed to a female character?
Well, I think our overall mandate for working on Supergirl, and I'm pretty sure Sterling would agree with me on this, was to treat her like a normal girl. And with all the foibles and all of the good parts that come with that, and that was certainly my approach to the artwork. I just, in my mind, Kara is just this girl who lost everything, woke up on another planet, suddenly had superpowers, and was expected to pick up the family business. And she was trying to find her way in doing that. So, the way that I drew her was very much about that, trying to present her as a more realistic version of the character than I'd seen in a very long time.
All right, let's talk a little bit more about the artwork. Was there anyone that was the model or the inspiration for it? I noticed that mostly, for the most part, Supergirl is drawn to be incredibly attractive.
Yeah.
I don't think your Supergirl was any less attractive, but she did have a wholesome quality that went along with it, a texture that made her a lot more genuine and a lot less, high-class model, if that's the right approach to it.
Right.
So was there anything like that?
There was a few different actresses that I was looking at as sort of like my general idea, Kaylee Cuoco and Alicia Cuthbert, and just trying to get that more kind of corn-fed quality into her, where she was pretty, but she wasn't super pretty, but she was attractive enough, and then she looked young enough, and didn't want to veer towards fashion models, didn't want to veer towards adult film actresses or anything. I just wanted to draw a normal, attractive girl.
Are you watching the show?
I am watching the show.
Tell us what you think of the show.
I love the show, actually. I'm a big fan of all the DC TV shows. So I love Melissa Benoist as the character. I think that they write the show really well. I think that there is enough of a playfulness to the show that it doesn't get mired down in the same melodrama that Arrow tends to wander in.
Yeah, Punisher with the bow, right?
Right. It's weird because she straddles amongst those shows. The character kind of straddles that line between what they're doing on Flash and what they're doing on Arrow, where you have that sense of optimism on Flash, but it also veers more into the typical sort of CW Vampire Diaries, everything's my fault, kind of territory. And then Arrow, which is less Punisher, but they're definitely reach. There are definitely points where they're just reaching for that Batman kind of vibe, and it's not it's not what you would traditionally see, or it's not what you would traditionally get from Green Arrow as a character, or that what we as comic book readers are used to as Green Arrow character. It works in context for what they have and what they can do. You're probably never going to see Batman on Supergirl or on The Flash or anything. So, close enough.
Well, I was gonna let the last question be for the show, but let's say you get the chance to be at Supergirl again. You got full control. You got carte blanche. What's your Supergirl story?
What's my Supergirl story?
Yeah, what's your Supergirl story? And remember, you guys did the preeminent, seminal Supergirl work. That's what we want to come back to. What's your Supergirl story?
Well, I would probably, from a continuity standpoint, more than likely I would pick up whatever Steve Orlando, if I were to take over after what Steve Orlando is doing now, I would basically try to spin off from those threads. But I have a very particular story where some alien somewhere out in space puts a bounty on Supergirl's head. So she gets bombarded by all these alien bounty hunters, and she has to go into space and find out who put the price on her head and why, and so that's the story that I would want to do.
That sounds like everything most comic books, especially most superhero comic books, are not right now. That sounds like fun.
I'm all about fun. So,
hey, Jamal Igle at the New Jersey Expo. Thank you very much for your time.
My
sir.
pleasure.